When I was in high school, I had my first experience with sleep paralysis. I was in a van on a school trip, and I was sleeping with my head pointed down. When I woke up, I realized I was still asleep, and frantically tried to jerk myself awake. I felt like I couldn't breathe, but I woke up before I tried to yell. Episodes like this one continued, but only when I took naps. However, I never really experienced anything paranormal during these episodes, so I quit taking naps, but it didn't really matter. My worst ever experience was in my childhood home. I fell asleep laying on my back and I woke up to my closet door opened. It was open just enough that I couldn't see inside, but I felt like something was in there. I tried to move my head, but I was unable to. I so badly wanted to get a better angle so I could reassure myself that nothing was in there. The door opened up a bit more to reveal a face. Now, let me tell you, I'm not exaggerating at all when I say that this face looked like an old woman who severely abused methamphetamine. She shot me an unnaturally wide grin, which I could see the details of her rotting gum line. We had this intense connection to one another. Just one glance and I was able to see that she knew I was paralyzed, and my own fear was fueling her happiness. I didn't see her reach for it, but the door slammed so hard that I felt it shake my bed. Then I woke up for real. I assumed it was a terrible dream and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I woke up the next morning and went to grab some clothes to get dressed after a shower. Because I had a small room at the time, I kept my dresser in my closet. I went to grab the doorknob and I pulled it straight out of the door. I pushed it back into the door and managed to get the door open, but the other side of the doorknob was against the wall in my closet. The only thing that made sense to me was something slammed my door so hard that it broke the screw and that held the knob together. I asked both my parents and sister if they were in my room that night, and then they said no. So I explained to them what happened. My parents thought I was making stuff up to scare my sister and completely disregarded it. After all, this wasn't the only time things out of the blue had occurred in my home. My mother and sister were often frightened about certain things that happened in our house and believed them to be paranormal. My stepdad was the only one who would 100% try to defuse these situations by saying, "We have an old house," etc. He eventually started to notice these odd occurrences as time went on, but that's a story for another time. 4 years or so, I lived in a different town and smoked weed every night before bed because it keeps me from dreaming. I don't think anything had followed me from that house, but I think it knows when I'm back home. For as long as I've known my wife, she's mentioned growing up in a haunted house. I always assumed she was joking because she's always brought it up in a lighthearted way and never went into much detail. It was a big old house, and I figured she was just talking about old house noises. The house belonged to her old great aunt and who raised my wife for most of her childhood. Her great aunt recently passed away and her great aunt's daughter now owns the house. After my wife's great aunt passed, we went to stay in the house for 4 nights to attend the funeral and spend time with my wife's family as we lived in another state. When we got there, my wife and her aunt were chatting and mentioned that they thought my wife's great aunt might join ghosts already haunting the house. I still didn't consider what they might be serious. The first night we spent there, I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed someone standing in the corner of the room beside the door. Thinking it was my wife, I asked what she was doing. This woke up my wife, who was actually sleeping beside me. I said I thought I saw someone in the room with us, but it must be my eyes playing tricks on me. She said the person in the corner next to the door, "Yeah, don't worry about it." I almost pissed myself. I thought there was some creep in the room and my wife was too sleepy to process it. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but when my phone lit up the room, I saw that there was no one there. There wasn't even a weird shape that I might have mistaken for a person. The door was closed, so it wasn't like there could have been someone who left the room in the moment I was looking away to grab the phone. My wife told me it was common to see shadowy people in the night, and I shouldn't worry about it because they don't do anything. She fell right back asleep after that, but I just lay there awake during the whole night, wondering what the hell just happened. The next morning I asked my wife about it, and she said she wasn't kidding about the house being haunted. People who spend the night in the house regularly see and hear ghosts, but they never hurt anyone or cause any problems. I remained skeptical even after the next night, which had been after the funeral. And my wife and aunt both reported they'd been visited in their dreams by my wife's great aunt. So far in my mind, everything was weird but explainable. The figure in the room could have been a strange trick of the light. My wife and her aunt had just attended the funeral of their loved ones, and it made sense for them to both dream about her the next night. The third night, I kept awake for hours by the constant sound of footsteps pacing around the house. My wife also heard them, but she said it was normal and I shouldn't worry, and she fell back asleep easily. A few times during the night, I got up to look around for the source of the noise. I even did a couple laps of the outside of the house in case there was someone outside. I never saw anyone walking around. At one point, I was in the lounge room and heard footsteps in the kitchen and called out to ask if there was anybody there. My wife's aunt opened her bedroom door and said that she could hear the footsteps too, just like my wife told me it was normal and there was no cause for concern. Then there was a sound of a drawer opening in the kitchen, which we both reacted to, and I went to check and found the cutlery drawer open. My wife's aunt, who come to the kitchen too, simply closed the drawer and commented with mild annoyance that the ghosts were always leaving things open and went back to bed, leaving me to my existential crisis. I could not come up with a way to explain that at all. We both heard footsteps and heard the drawer open at the same time, and there's no one there and no way out of the kitchen except for past us. I tried to staying on the couch to try and catch the mystery walker, and there was multiple times I heard footsteps pass through the lounge room, but I never saw anything. Eventually, I gave up and went back to bed. Nothing really happened the final night, though we woke up several times to the cabinets opening and no one remembered leaving them open, though that could have been explainable by someone just forgetting and not even sleepwalking. Even so, the footsteps still bothered me, and the shadowy person from the first night, and the cabinets opening on the final night, that made me nervous in light of everything that happened on the third night. Up until now, I always scoffed at the idea of the paranormal, but I just can't reconcile my experiences in that house with my skepticism. Talking to my wife's family revealed that everyone who stayed in the house believed it was haunted because they had at least one completely unexplainable experience. They all report that the ghosts leave people alone for most of the part, though some who lived there for a long time as children, including my wife and her aunt, had described meeting people they thought were probably ghosts and having positive but strange interactions with them. One time in my dream last night, I vividly recall the words, "Beware of the skeleton of the cat in the sand." It is an omen being spoken to me again and again, by whom I don't know, and I remembered it because that's objectively a really weird thing to dream, but like in the dream, the cat skeleton in the sand was supposed to portend something catastrophic coming in my life, like maybe a death, a loss, something, just bad, and that phrase just repeated over and over until I woke up sweating. Well, today I was stressed from work, so I did what I do often and took a lunchtime walk down by the beach near my house. I've done this every couple of days since the start of the pandemic. I was looking at the seabirds, listening to the water laps against the shore, just generally feeling pretty chill down there. Then that's when I saw it, and I almost threw up right there. Right down on the sand was undeniably a cat skull. Maybe a foot away, there was also its spine and its legs, a rib or two, just various other bones, but it was all there, probably left by hawks or owls in the area. A freaking cat skeleton in the sand. I'm not a spiritual person, I'm not religious either, but I cannot deny that this is weird, and I'm not really sure how to process it or what it means. What does it mean if you have a really specific thing in a dream that actually happens the very next day? What kind of omen even is a dead cat? Is this something spiritual happening? Any insight would be super appreciated. I just lost my mom last year. I don't think I have the emotional captivity to deal with a bad omen, but also, I want to understand. Also, a quick update, I got a call this afternoon that a family member died. She was not in great health, so I guess it's not as a great shock as someone young and agile kicking the bucket, but we were still very close. I don't think that's a coincidence either.